You know, when I think about making a marinade for lamb, or anything actually, I think about what's commonly used with it. I don't need to like reinvent the wheel every time. And when I think of lamb, I think of garlic, rosemary, and maybe some lemon. All kinds of Greek Mediterranean flavors. So I'm going to start with 4 big cloves of garlic. And instead of using the big food processor, I love this little mini chop. Just so convenient. I need 3 tablespoons of fresh rosemary. Unfortunately, I have a lot of it in my garden. Just peel it off the stems. Give it a big chop. There's something about the combination of lamb and rosemary. They just go together. So why fight it? I mean, if you wanted to do lamb and tarragon, the lamb would really sort of overpower the tarragon. But rosemary has that same kind of really like strong flavor that would stand up to it and complement it. My friend Frank's coming over. I know he loves lamb, so that's good. So that should be about 3 good tablespoons of rosemary. You don't have to cut it up so finely because I'm going to chop it up in the mini chop. You need a little oregano, 1½ teaspoons, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 3/4 teaspoon of pepper, and just give it a chop. Look how convenient this is. I love this. Sure beats chopping it up by hand. So I'm just going to mix the marinade that I'm going to marinate the lamb in. So all of this just goes right in. And then I'm just going to add classic marinade ingredients. So first I have freshly squeezed lemon juice, about 1/2 cup. Really important for it to be fresh. 1/2 cup of olive oil. It's like making a vinaigrette, actually. Lemon juice, olive oil. Just pour it in. And then to add to the flavor, I'm going to add red wine to it. But you know, you really want to make sure it's a really good red wine. This is a good Côte de Rhône. 1/2 cup of red wine. I'm just going to stir these guys together. Just stir all the herbs and the lemon juice. So what I've done is I've taken a rack of lamb and I've asked the butcher to cut it into individual chops. I'm just going to put each one right in the marinade. So this is going to marinate for about at least 2 hours. If I have time to marinate it overnight, that's what I do. So this is 2 racks of lamb, which makes 16 individual chops. I think that's enough for Frank and me. Okay, I'm just going to wrap these up, put it in the fridge, and then I'm going to get the grill all set up. Ready to grill the lamb. It's been marinating in the garlic and rosemary, oregano. I'm just going to sprinkle it with salt and pepper just before I put it on the grill. Okay, these are going to cook really fast, like 4 minutes on each side. I've got a grill that has pretty hot coals, but it's just 1 layer. You don't want to overcook these guys. Whoa! So this is rack of lamb, and if you can only buy a rack of lamb whole and you don't have a butcher, you can just cut it into chops yourself. It's quite easy. It's Frenched, which means that the bones are cleaned off. Where's Jeffrey when I need him? Okay. Hot mitt. Hot fire. Oh, I can really smell the garlic and rosemary, and the lamb's gonna be just delicious. It's gonna be so good with the yogurt and mint sauce. Yum. Because there's so much oil in the marinade, I actually wouldn't pour more marinade on it. Otherwise, you'll have like an inferno. I mean, do these look delicious or what? I think the thinner ones are done. I'm just gonna put them on a platter and then let them rest. I'm gonna cover them with foil, let them rest for about 10 minutes, and then all the juices get back into the lamb. Ooh, these look so delicious. You know, by the time you get the small ones off, the bigger ones are ready, so it's a good system. Boy, that is one gorgeous platter of rack of lamb. Cover it with foil and just let all the juices get back into it. What you want to be sure is don't ever put it back in the marinade, and don't use the marinade as a sauce because it had raw meat in it. Cover it like that. Cover it really securely so it stays hot. And while that rests, I'm gonna get the rest of the meal ready. I need mint and I need dill for my Greek lamb with yogurt mint sauce. My friend Frank is coming. I'm gonna make it for him. Okay, lots of mint, I love that. And dill I just grow in pots. I don't use much dill, but it's nice to have it when I have it. When I was thinking what kind of sauce would be good with the lamb, I thought classic Greek flavors again. So yogurt, mint, this is gonna be delicious. I'm making a mint and yogurt sauce for it. First, I need a half a cup of chopped mint leaves. You know, I'm gonna chop up the leaves. I can certainly measure a half a cup of leaves, but it's a whole different measurement when they're chopped leaves. And I think it's much more accurate. And I want the flavors to be exactly the right proportion. Okay, I'm just gonna give it a big rough chop and then measure it. So the base of the sauce is yogurt, and then it's got all kinds of things, mint, dill, scallions to give it a little heat. It's gonna have lots of flavor, so that should be about half a cup. Right into the food processor. 2 tablespoons of dill. Dill, just run your knife along the stems. The stems of dill are tender, so it doesn't really matter. So I'd say that's about 2 tablespoons chopped dill and 6 scallions. I'm just gonna give them a rough chop because they're gonna get cut up in the food processor. This is not the place for dried herbs. You want really that fresh sort of zing of fresh herbs. Put it right in. Now for a little heat, just a little pinch of red pepper flakes. Just give it a little punch. A tablespoon of olive oil. I'm gonna make a paste, which I'm gonna add the yogurt to. A little bit of lemon juice, about a tablespoon. I'll squeeze it right in. Okay, nice squeeze of lemon, just give it that fresh lemon hit. And just grind it up until a coarse paste. And that really releases all the fresh herb flavor. So I'm just gonna add 7 ounces of yogurt. This is Greek yogurt, of course, since we're making Greek lamb, which is really thick yogurt. A teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper. I think Frank's gonna like this for lunch. And just give it a pour. So that's about as easy as the sauce gets, doesn't it? Just want to make sure it tastes great. I love all the green herbs in it. It's just fantastic. It's really tangy from the yogurt, and the mint is so clear, and all the herbs, oh, this is just delicious. It's gonna be really good with the lamb. So because it's a really thick sauce, instead of pouring it over the lamb, I'm gonna put it under the lamb. I'll show you. I'm just gonna put it right down the middle of this plate, and then put the lamb right on top of it. The lamb's resting. When it's done, it's just gonna go right down the middle of this platter. Frank's gonna be here any minute. I'm gonna make the quickest, easiest tomato and feta salad with an oregano vinaigrette. This salad just couldn't be simpler or more delicious. It's just tomatoes, cores removed, cut into big, thick wedges. And some thick slices of feta right in the center of the plate. Then drizzle over good olive oil and some red wine vinegar. Then what I do is I take the oregano and crush it between my hands. It really releases the oil and the flavor of the oregano. A big sprinkling of salt, freshly ground black pepper, and finally, because it needs a little green, I put some arugula around the outside. The pepperiness is good with it. And the salad's done. Well, how good does this look? Salad's done, the sauce is done. All I have to do is plate up the lamb. So I'm gonna put the lamb on with their little legs crossing. Let's see how this goes. Just like that. And just rest them right on the sauce. Oh, they're so juicy. Ah, grill some lamb and a man shows up. Works every time. So it's grilled Greek lamb.
With some fabulous sauce?
It's got a yogurt and mint sauce. So
That's fantastic.
You ready for a little dinner?
I am indeed.
Outside in the garden? What do you think, as long as we're talking about the garden?
That sounds great. Can I?
One more.
One more?
Yeah. Just like that. And maybe a little lemon on the end.
Perfect.
Just in case. Does that look good?
Beautiful.
Okay, you take the lamb.
I got it.
I'll take the tomato salad.
Perfect.
We can imagine ourselves in Mykonos. Don't tell Jeffrey. I'm giving a dinner party. I really do try and keep things simple. Sort of my way of getting back to basics. So I'm gonna make a Scallop Gratin, which is a very easy dish to make. And I'm gonna make it in individual dishes, which I think is a little more special and frankly, easier for me. So I have 2 pounds of scallops. You can use bay scallops or sea scallops. Bay scallops aren't in season, so I'm just taking sea scallops, cutting them in half so that they cook more quickly. When I gave a dinner party, I used to make 1 million dishes, and it would just take forever. And frankly, I don't think everybody had a better time. So now I keep it really simple, make a few really special things. Big green salad to go with the scallops, and that's all anybody needs. Okay, that's 2 pounds of sea scallops cut in half. Now I'm gonna put a little white wine in each of the gratin dishes. I have 6 gratin dishes, and a tablespoon of white wine in each one. I'm using a dry white wine. I like Sauvignon Blanc, but whatever you're gonna serve with dinner, make sure it's a good one. Okay, now the scallops, I'm just gonna pat them dry a little bit. They'll brown better in the oven if they're a little drier. Just paper towels. So I'm gonna distribute the 2 pounds among the 6 dishes. Just enough for each person for main course. This is a great way to do a dish that serves a large crowd because you can actually assemble the whole thing in advance, refrigerate it, and then just bake it before dinner. I'm just gonna wash up and then I'll make the topping. And this is what makes this gratin so special, is the topping. First into the mixing bowl, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter at room temperature. Then 6 big garlic cloves, chopped. 2 minced shallots, 2 ounces of minced prosciutto, and 4 tablespoons of minced fresh parsley leaves. Some freshly squeezed lemon juice, 2 tablespoons. It's one of those magic ingredients that really brings out the flavor and everything in the dish. And then a French classic with seafood, Pernod. It's got a wonderful anise flavor. Just 2 tablespoons of Pernod really adds depth of flavor. A couple of teaspoons of kosher salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, and then the mixer gets switched on low, and I just drizzled in 6 tablespoons of olive oil. Okay, one more ingredient, panko. They're Japanese bread flakes. They're actually great. They're better than breadcrumbs because they come out much crispier. You can find them in the grocery store or in a seafood shop. So half a cup of panko, and they just get folded in with a rubber spatula. See what I mean about simple? That's really easy. I'm just gonna put this topping right on top of the scallops. All that butter and shallots, and these are no boring scallops. These are gonna be delicious. Scallops out of the refrigerator into the oven. 425 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes. And they're gonna be bubbly and hot and delicious. It's Friday. Jeffrey's coming home tonight. Just when he's expecting yet another roast chicken, I always like to shake it up a little bit. So I'm making an old-fashioned Jewish dinner with brisket, carrots, onions. It's gonna be really good. Whoa, that's a big piece of meat for 2 people, but it's like making a beef stew. It lasts forever and you can reheat it. It's a very big brisket for 2 people. I'll show you how easy it is. I'm gonna make a rub for the top. 2 tablespoons of salt. I know it seems like a lot of salt, but it's a big piece of brisket. 1 tablespoon of garlic, chopped up garlic. 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. And 2 teaspoons of freshly ground pepper. Just gonna smush that all together and then rub it on top of the brisket. Okay, that's appropriately smushed together. I'm just gonna sprinkle it on the top and then rub it in. Brisket's a great cut of stewing meat to buy. When you go to the store, make sure you don't buy a corned beef brisket, which is the same cut, but it's already been processed with spices and salt. Okay, that's done. I'm gonna put on a pound of carrots, Just chop them up in chunks, and it's gonna stew along with the beef. It's gonna be really good. These are big carrots too. Pound of carrots can be anything from 2 big carrots to 5 small ones. Okay, and then 8 stalks of celery. Just cut off the ends a little bit, the brown ends. And then just cut it in chunks. Remember, this is going to stew for 3.5 hours. Celery. Okay, and onions, I've got 6 onions sliced all over the top. This already looks like it has a lot of flavor, doesn't it? And some bay leaves for flavor. These are beautiful bay leaves. 6. How's that? Okay, and then I'm going to pour good tomato juice all over the top of it. Just enough to come up about 3/4 of the way up the beef. So just pour it right on top. And this is going to make the sauce after it cooks. Okay. Now we're just going to cover it and bake it. So I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil. But first, because I don't want the foil to touch the tomato juice, it reacts really badly, I'll either cover it with plastic wrap or parchment paper. Into the oven, 350 degrees for about 3.5 hours until it's fork tender. So that was pretty fast for dinner that could feed probably 10 people. But for tonight, it's just Jeffrey and me. Brisket and vegetables, it's a whole meal in one. So let's roast a filet. So I know this looks a little daunting, but it's not, trust me. So I asked the butcher to trim and tie it. So trimming is taking off all the fat, and then that little layer of silver that's sometimes on it, taking that off too. And then tying it so it's nice and round. And sometimes there's like this little end, help tie it under. And the point of tying it, like these little strings, is to make sure that it's very even. So the beginning, the middle, and the end all cook at exactly the same time. So it's gonna be perfect. So that's the filet. And I'm gonna just dry the outside. And the point of this is so the butter that I'm gonna put on the outside sticks to it. That's the drying. So 2 tablespoons of room temperature butter. You want it to be really soft. And then I just do it with my hands, just slather it on the outside. And the point of this is to keep the meat really moist. Also, then the salt and pepper that I'm gonna add is gonna stick to it. I actually did this with Jay Leno once a long time ago on TV. I had him rubbing butter on a filet of beef. If he can't make a joke out of that, he doesn't deserve to be a comic. It was really fun. Okay, so I'm gonna just rub this all on the outside. Get butter all evenly all over it. Good and messy. Tablespoon of salt. I know it's a lot, but you really want, you've got a whole filet of beef to season. You wanna make sure it's really well seasoned. And a tablespoon of pepper. Slippery hands. This is such a great dish for a holiday. It's not really Tuesday night dinner, but it's for a holiday or for a special event. It's so easy to do, and people are so impressed that you can make a whole filet of beef. Okay, I'm just gonna wash my hands. Into the oven, 500 degrees. It's really hot. Make sure your oven's very clean, otherwise it'll smoke. For 22 minutes for rare, but I like it medium rare, so I'm gonna do it for 25 minutes. And it comes out perfectly every time. Next, mustard horseradish sauce. Oof, say that 10 times fast. Okay, so first I need 1.5 cups of mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is a great base for sauce. The key is that it doesn't taste like mayonnaise. When I have the store, I would make all these like chicken salad with mayonnaise, but I'd add white wine or mustard or something to take away that kind of distinctive mayonnaise flavor. 3 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. And then, because I want it to look like mustard and taste like mustard, 1.5 tablespoons of coarse grain mustard. And then you see the grains of mustard and that kind of little bite of mustard, which is great. Tablespoon of horseradish, not too much because it's really sharp. And 1/3 cup of sour cream. So the mayonnaise and sour cream together kind of like mask the fact that you started with mayonnaise. That should be about 1/3 cup. And salt. And just whisk it all together. So you've got a really great high-low thing, really fancy filet of beef, and a sauce that you made from ingredients in your pantry. You almost didn't even have to shop for them. I'm just gonna put this in a bowl. Maybe a simple sauce, but you put it in a fancy bowl, it looks fancy. I actually collect these hotel silver bowls. They're really great. It's kind of not your mother's fancy silver. It's like silver that hotels used to use, so it has that patina. I love it. And that's the sauce. Okay, the beef's almost done. I'm gonna take it out to rest, and then we're gonna go to the garden. So I'll take the filet out. Boy, does that look good. I'll cover it in foil and let it rest while I head outside. So you wanna come see the garden? I've just recently redone it. I mean, the truth is, I'm always redoing it. But instead of adding things, I seem to be taking things away. So make it simpler and simpler. So I've got big boxwood. Well, they used to be boxwood, now ilex hedges, big squares, willows in the four corners. Aren't they crazy? I love the willows. I think they're really fun. And this is Nepeta. No, it's not Nepeta, actually. It's Calamintha. It's Nepeta in the spring, but Calamintha later. Beautiful big white flowers. And I love the geraniums. Aren't they crazy? They just get bigger and bigger and bigger, all purple. But it's really simple. It's not complicated, right? And then over here, I've got all kinds of cutting flowers and vegetables. Got white zinnias, a riot of zinnias. Of course, I only use the white ones. Lots of butterflies. And this is the craziest thing. It's the biggest basil I've ever seen in my life. I think it's time to make pesto? I would say so. That's crazy. It's almost as big as me. But I need parsley. I think it'd be really nice on the platter. So, like a big bunch of parsley with the filet of beef. That'll be really great. I've got celery root here. This looks pretty good, doesn't it? Celery root? Okay, let's go back to the filet of beef. I'm gonna show you how to carve a filet of beef, and trust me, it's so much easier than like a standing rib roast. Okay, so I think it should be perfect. It's been resting. Now, how gorgeous is that? So I'm gonna put it on the board. And the first thing I need to do, it's still really hot. It's amazing how hot it stays under that foil. First thing I need to do is get rid of all the strings. Nobody wants to eat string. So I'm just gonna take each string off. First time I ever had a whole filet of beef was at a friend's house in Washington in the 70s. Jeffrey and I were invited to somebody's house for dinner. It was a guy, a single guy was making dinner. And I thought, oh, this is gonna be really bad. And it was the days when I was making like Julia Child's recipes, really fancy French things. I was teaching myself how to cook. And I said to Jeffrey, we should probably eat something before we go to this guy's house, because I thought it was gonna be terrible. And when we got there, he had roasted an entire filet of beef, which I thought was so elegant, I couldn't believe it. He baked his own bread. And he'd made something like chocolate mousse for dessert. It was just stunning, absolutely stunning. And after that, I actually decided that my cooking should be simpler, that it shouldn't be so sort of French and fancy. It should be really elegant and really simple. I wonder if he knows how much of an influence he had on me, all the way from the 70s. And one thing about having a filet of beef in your repertoire is you can always make it with lots of different sauces, and you've got something totally different. So this is with mustard and horseradish sauce, but I make it with a blue cheese sauce by just boiling heavy cream and adding blue cheese to it, which is so good. I sometimes do it with a basil Parmesan mayonnaise. So it's like a summer dish or a winter dish. One filet of beef, lots of different ways. Okay. So this is done. Just takes a second, but it's really important to take the string off. And then I'll show you how you slice it. And this is the moment. I always think, I hope it's perfect. And the good news is, it always is. So I like sort of thicker slices, and each person gets 2 slices. So, wow. Now tell me that isn't perfectly cooked filet of beef. So when I put it on the platter, I actually slice most of it, but not the whole thing. I think it looks nicer to have a big piece at the end. You can always slice more. One filet of beef will serve like 10 people. That's why it's great for parties or for holidays. And if there are leftovers, you can make little sandwiches the next day. Very elegant sandwiches. I'm just using a small, sharp slicing knife to really just make sure it's sharp and get nice slices. Okay, so onto a platter. I've got a big, long, narrow platter, which is perfect. I'm gonna put the big piece on the back. just like that. And then try as much as I can to put this right next to it. Yay, I did it. And then some parsley, just to make it look better. Always looks better with something green on the plate. Just right down here. And mustard horseradish sauce. It's great together. And happily, there's always a little bit of filet beef left over for whoever carved it, me. It's so tender and so flavorful. It's really great. And that's roast filet beef. That's pretty easy, right? And the mustard horseradish sauce, even easier. Your friends are gonna be completely knocked out. For a potluck party, I have 3 basic principles. Make it ahead, make things that travel well, and make it so delicious. So for this party, I'm making short ribs and cheddar dill cornbread. How good does that sound? So what I did was I asked the butcher for 9 short ribs, and I asked him to trim the fat off them. I've got nice, big, meaty short ribs. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roast them first, and then I'm gonna put them in a big pot with all kinds of wine and vegetables, and just cook them up slowly, so they're really tender and delicious. So I have 9 short ribs. Extra one in the middle. Just sprinkle them with lots of salt and pepper. I'm gonna roast them at high temperature, 400 degrees, for about 15 minutes. And what that's gonna do is really caramelize and sear the meat, instead of doing it on the top of a stove, which is so annoying. And then into the oven, 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. And then it's gonna go all into a big stock pot. Okay, into the oven. So while the short ribs sear in the oven, I'm gonna get the vegetables for the sauce ready. So I'm gonna chop up lots of vegetables and then cook them over low heat in a stock pot and really caramelize the flavors, get the wonderful flavors into the sauce. The first thing I'm starting with is 1 large leek, which is really in the onion family, but a milder onion flavor. Very classic for sauces. And what I did was I washed it really, really well, because sometimes there's sand in leeks. I'm gonna heat up a 1/4 cup of oil. I need a big stock pot for this, because all the vegetables and the short ribs are gonna go into this. And while that heats up, I'm gonna get 1 fennel chopped up. Fennel's kind of unusual vegetable, but it's pretty much available everywhere now. Just cut off the tops, cut off the end if it's browned, and then what I like to do is take out the core. So just run your knife down the middle, and you can see the core is right there. It's that little triangle. So just take it out. It's just a little tougher than the rest of the fennel. Fennel is really this wonderful anise flavor. If you haven't had it, I have to say I'm not a fan of raw fennel, but cooked fennel is so delicious. So I'm just gonna chop it up. I've got all kinds of vegetables in this sauce, and the more vegetables, the more flavored it is. Fennel and leeks and carrots and celery and onions, and it all blends together. Just cooked for a long time. It just flavors the sauce. Beef short ribs can be really rich, so I like a really nice fresh vegetable sauce to go with it. So oil's nice and hot, so in goes the fennel and leeks. Just toss them right in. And I have lots more vegetables to put in the sauce. I've got 2 onions, 4 cups of celery, and 2 carrots. I'm gonna just put them right in. This gives the sauce so much flavor and texture, it's wonderful. And when the short ribs are so rich, that really the vegetables in the sauce really cut that. Fabulous. Just gonna give it a big stir. I'm gonna cook this for about 15, 20 minutes until the vegetables are really tender and browned. And then I'm gonna add wine, I'm gonna add herbs. It's gonna be delicious. So I've been cooking a whole pot of vegetables, fennel and leeks, carrots, onions, until they're really nice and soft, about 20 minutes. So I've got 3 cloves of garlic, just right into the pot. I'm gonna cook them for just about a minute, so you get all the flavor but not burnt. Okay, give it a little stir. This smells good. You can even smell the garlic already. Okay, now I'm gonna put some tomato paste in, about 2 tablespoons. It's gonna really intensify the sauce. And a whole bottle of red wine. I'm actually using Burgundy. I always cook with something I'd want to serve for dinner. You don't want to use a cheap wine in your cooking and then it tastes like cheap dinner. Fabulous. So this is gonna cook for about 10 minutes until the wine is reduced by half and it'll really intensify the flavors. Oh, I think I can smell those short ribs searing in the oven. I'm gonna go see how they're doing. Oh my God, they're just gorgeous, nice and brown. I'm gonna turn the oven down to 300. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the short ribs into the sauce and then put it all back in the oven. And it's gonna cook slowly for a long time until those short ribs, you can just eat them with a spoon. This is great. Okay, now I'm gonna season the sauce. I'm gonna put in a tablespoon of salt, a teaspoon of pepper. Okay, give that a big stir. Okay, now I'm gonna make an herb bouquet. It's sort of like a bouquet garni, but just 2 herbs. So I've got rosemary and fresh thyme. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie them together. If I just put them in the sauce, then fishing out the stems would be impossible. But if I tie them together and just fish out the whole bundle, get all of the flavor and none of the problems. Okay, right into the sauce. Okay, so I'm just gonna put the ribs in. Just put them right on top of the sauce. Tiara's dessert better be really good after this. It's a challenge to see whose is better. Somehow I think it will be. Okay, that's a perfect fit. 9 short ribs right in. Okay, next a little bit of a surprise ingredient. A tablespoon of brown sugar really brings out the sweetness in the vegetable and caramelizes everything. And 6 cups of beef stock. I have homemade beef stock, but if you can find good beef stock in the store, that's fine too. Homemade's always better. So this is a lot of liquid, and it's just gonna simmer slowly in this stock and the sauce and all the juices from the short ribs. Oh my God, this is gonna be so good. Okay, now I'm just gonna bring this up to a simmer. Give it a stir. You want it simmering when it goes in the oven so it starts cooking right away. I'm gonna put it into the oven, 300 degrees, for about 2 hours, really slow cook it. It's gonna be one great dinner. Whoa, that's a big pot. The short ribs have been cooking for about 2 hours. They're gonna be meltingly tender. What I'm gonna do is, oh, how good does that look? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the short ribs out of the sauce, and then I'm gonna reduce the sauce down even further. These are gonna just be wonderful. Oh, they're just completely falling apart. Look at that. I'd say TR is gonna be very happy with this dinner. So the point of reducing the sauce is just really intensify the flavor. Whoa, they're just completely falling off the bone. Wonderful part of having bones in the sauce is it really flavors it and thickens it. So I'm gonna take all of these out. It's amazing how much the short ribs actually reduce in size when they're cooking. They look pretty big when they start, but by now they're really smaller. So I think 2 or 3 per person is great. So I'm gonna take out our little bundle of herbs that has just nothing but stems now. And that's why we tie it together. And I'm gonna skim off some of the fat because you really don't want the sauce to be too greasy. The short ribs are rich enough as it is. I'm gonna reduce this on simmer for about 20 minutes till it's rich and thick and delicious. And next I'm gonna make cheddar dough cornbread to go with it. It's nothing like a potluck party for stress-free entertaining. Everybody gets to do one thing and you have a whole party. It's great. I've reduced the sauce for the short ribs and it's so nice and thick. I just wanna, look how fabulous that looks. It's really thick and rich. It tastes so good. You can really taste the beef and the vegetables and the wine, the garlic, fantastic. This is gonna be really good. Okay, so now I'm just gonna put the short ribs right back in and let them heat up together. Right in the sauce. Try and do it without getting it all over me. Perfect. This is just gonna be fantastic. I always keep marinara sauce in the pantry, and it's a key ingredient in my roasted eggplant parmesan. I mean, by the time you've cooked the eggplant, sliced all the ingredients and assembled it, who wants to start making marinara sauce? Not me. So first the eggplant. I've roasted lots of it. Let me tell you how I did it. I sliced 2½ pounds of eggplant into half moons, laid them in a single layer on 3 sheet pans, brushed both sides with olive oil, sprinkled a teaspoon of oregano over the eggplant on each sheet pan, crushing it slightly, sprinkled a ½ tablespoon of salt on each pan and a ½ teaspoon of pepper. Next, I put the 3 sheet pans in the oven at 400 degrees for 15 minutes. Then I turned the slices, rotated the pans, and baked them for 10 minutes more until they were tender. Okay, last pan. Trust me, once you've roasted eggplant, you'll never go back to frying it again. You don't get it all over the kitchen. You don't get it all over yourself. Okay, I've got all the elements. I've got marinara sauce. I've got eggplant. I have to pull some other things together. ½ cup of julienne basil, a pound of buffalo mozzarella in thick slices, 8 ounces of garlic and herb goat cheese, and 1½ cups of freshly grated Parmesan. Okay, now I'm just gonna layer up all these ingredients. I'll start with 1/3 of the marinara in the pan, spread it out, then add 1/3 of the roasted eggplant, 1/3 of the julienne basil, 1/3 of the buffalo mozzarella slices, 1/3 of the goat cheese, and 1/3 of the Parmesan. I always grate it myself. Now we'll do the same thing all over again. Marinara, eggplant, basil, mozzarella, goat cheese, Parmesan, and again, ending with grated Parmesan. Now, how good does that look already? So one last thing to do, I'm gonna make a crunchy breadcrumb topping for the roasted eggplant Parmesan. Just gives it nice texture. So I need about 1 1/3 cups of breadcrumbs. And it's really easy. Just a few more things to add to give it great flavor. First, 4 minced garlic cloves, then 1/4 cup of chopped fresh basil. I'll pulse them just to combine. Then I'll add 1/4 cup of olive oil, a teaspoon of salt, and pulse them again, just enough to moisten the crumbs. Okay, that was pretty easy for flavored breadcrumbs, right? Okay, I'm just gonna put these right on top. So this is gonna bake 400 degrees for 50 minutes, and then I'm gonna let it set at room temperature for about 10 minutes so you can cut it easily. And that's gonna be so good. Okay, this is my roasted eggplant Parmesan. How good does that look? I just let it sit for about 10 minutes so you can serve it. And just make sure it tastes great. Wow. That's really good. It is Thanksgiving, so you have to have turkey. But I'm gonna do something really simple, roast turkey breast. So much easier to do, and you don't have to carve that whole bird. I'm just gonna go wash my hands and I'll show you the next part. Now I'm gonna make the most flavorful herb rub for this. You know, turkey really doesn't have that much flavor, so you gotta add it to it. Really bring out the turkeyness. So the first thing I'm gonna do is about 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. I'm gonna take this rub and put it underneath the skin and over the skin. It's so good. 2 teaspoons of mustard. I'm using dry mustard, it's got lots of intense flavor. And then lots of fresh herbs. Tablespoon of fresh sage, tablespoon of fresh rosemary, maybe just a teaspoon of fresh, that's more than a teaspoon, a fresh thyme. Just gonna chop them all up together. Into the garlic and mustard, I need 2 teaspoons of salt. I know everybody's worried about salt, but it's really important for flavoring a turkey. Teaspoon of pepper. Just mix them all together. And then in order to make it into a rub, I'm just gonna add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And because I like a little edge on things, I'm gonna put about a teaspoon or 2 of freshly squeezed lemon juice. That'll really bring out the flavor. So now all I'm gonna do is put the herbs underneath the skin so it really is directly on the turkey meat. So this is a whole turkey breast. It's actually 2 halves, and they're still connected. That's about 6 or 7 pounds total. And what you want to do is just very carefully put your fingers underneath the skin, and you just really pull it apart from the meat, and that'll give you a little pocket to put the herbs in. Just try not to puncture the skin so the herbs stay in. And then clean hands are a cook's best friend. Just gonna rub half the herbs underneath the skin and half the herbs on top. You can smell the sage, garlic. It's gonna be so delicious. Pour a cup of white wine into the pan. This will give it flavor and keep it really moist. Cook it in a 325-degree oven for about 2 hours until an instant read thermometer inserted in the thickest part of the breast reads 165 degrees, and the turkey will be done. Cover it with foil and allow it to rest at room temperature for 15 minutes. Scallops Provencal. I love making these. I know they're really fresh. Jeffrey and I just got them. It's about 1 pound of scallops, and the first thing I want to do is just salt and pepper them. Sometimes people salt and pepper the flour, but I think it never really gets into the scallops, so I'm going to salt and pepper them first and then flour them. So, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, lots of pepper, a little flour. And what the flour is going to do is going to sear the scallops really nicely, but it's also going to get into the sauce, so it's going to thicken the butter and lemon sauce. Okay. 2 tablespoons of butter. Just going to put the scallops in one layer. I'm going to cook them on medium heat for about 2 minutes, and then I'll turn them and add lots of flavor. In the meantime, I'm going to chop up some shallots. So 2 big shallots. Sometimes when I'm making this for a dinner party, I get all the ingredients all prepped in advance, and the whole thing just takes 5 minutes in the pan. Just going to turn the scallops. Perfect, they're nice and browned. And see, the browning sort of sears them, gives them lots of flavor. Okay, that's going to cook for another 2 minutes, and I'm just going to chop up some garlic. So I'm going to chop up these ingredients and then just add them to the pan and make a sauce with butter and white wine. It's going to be just delicious. And in order for it to be really Provençal, parsley. So I need about 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. How bad can that be? Okay, just a rough chop. Okay, now for the sauce. I've got all my ingredients ready. So I'm just going to put 2 tablespoons of butter in. I'm going to put in the shallots, the garlic, and parsley, 1/4 cup of parsley. And just saute this all together so you can smell the garlic and the shallots and parsley together. Just about 2 minutes on the saute pan. And then 1/3 cup of white wine, and that's going to get all the brown bits in the bottom of the pan into the sauce. Just choose a nice dry white wine, something you'd want to drink with a meal, and then serve it with a dinner. Okay, that's really it. It's just perfect. Okay, I'm just going to leave that for a minute while I get some herbs for the rice. And dinner's ready. Time to serve everything up. I like cod because it's kind of a meaty fish, but they're center cut because if you choose the end, it's going to be thin and they won't cook evenly. So 4 center cut cod fillets. I brush the bottom with olive oil, put the cod on top. I'm going to brush the top with olive oil, and that way they're just going to brown really nicely. You don't want something that's going to flake too much because it just doesn't have the same kind of substance to it. So olive oil, lots of salt and pepper. You want it to be really well seasoned, and some pepper. Okay. Into the oven, 400 degrees for just 10 minutes. Okay, now for the topping. So, I'm starting with Ritz crackers. Bet you didn't think I'd be cooking with those, but they're really buttery and they have lots of flavor. So I'm taking about 15 Ritz crackers, crumbling them up. I need cracker crumbs. Just break them up into the food processor. This is retro food, but made more modern. I really like the salty, kind of buttery thing going with the fish. Okay, that's about 1/2 cup of Ritz cracker crumbs. If I can get it off. Right into a bowl. And to that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of panko crumbs and make it really crunchy. 2 tablespoons of minced parsley, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, give it lots of flavor, and some melted butter. Just pour it over. And this is gonna make it brown and delicious, because butter makes everything better, right? You always want some kind of oil or butter on the panko. Panko is actually Japanese bread flakes, and it's really popular now, and you can find it in any grocery store. I don't know what we did without it 10 years ago. Okay, I'm gonna add some lemon zest to give it kind of a nice edge. About a teaspoon. Let's see. I always do it right over the thing that I'm zesting it into because it really catches the oils. Much more flavor. More flavor in the zest than in the juice, but we'll use the juice later. Okay, that should be about a teaspoon. Some salt. Give it a stir. As I said, baked fish can be kind of boring. It's this crumb topping that really gives it so much flavor. Actually, not only is it crumb topping, but it becomes part of the sauce. Okay, the first stage of the fish should be done in the oven. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of dry white wine, and I'm going to pour it actually directly on the fillets so the flavor really gets into the fillets. Just like that. A couple of tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice right on the fillets. Try and catch the seeds in your hand. And then I'm going to put the crumbs directly onto the fillets. Just pile them on. If some of them fall into the dish, it's not a problem because they'll really get incorporated in the sauce and flavor the sauce as well. It's a lot of crumbs, but it really gives the whole thing a lot of flavor. I think fish can be kind of scary to cook because you always think you're going to overcook it. But if you have fillets that are all the same thickness and they cook evenly, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, back into the oven, 400 degrees for exactly 12 minutes. It's going to be so good. So the fish should be ready. This looks great. See how it makes crispy topping and also really nice sauce? I love the way it looks. I love the way it tastes. And you can see that the sauce is kind of thickened by the panko and the Ritz crackers. Yum. So we'll just do a little lemon in the dish. One of the great things about this dish is the dish goes right to the table. Don't need to put it on a platter or anything. I just like to serve it with extra lemon, though. Just put it right in the dish. People can help themselves. I just need a little taste because it looks so good. Think anybody missed this little corner? Crispy crumbs, garlic and herbs, white wine and lemon sauce. This looks so good. The garlic and the herbs and the lemon and wine. Nothing boring about this fish dish. Everybody's gonna love it. I'm gonna zest 1 lemon. Whenever I do lemon juice, I always try and use this zest because it's got all the oils in it. It's so much more flavorful. Okay, next 3/4 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. Right into the bowl. 1/2 cup of olive oil. That keeps the loins of pork really moist. So I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. I really wanna mince this finely so it doesn't burn when I cook the loin of pork. Right into the marinade. 1.5 tablespoons of minced fresh rosemary. Okay, 1.5 tablespoons. Perfect. And then thyme. I think the rosemary and thyme together are really great. Very Mediterranean. So I need 1 tablespoon of minced fresh thyme leaves. So that's 1 tablespoon of thyme. I need 2 teaspoons of salt. And the last thing is 2 teaspoons of good mustard. I like Dijon mustard. It has a nice sharpness to it. So I'm just going to give it a little stir. This is really just like making a vinaigrette. It just has more lemon juice in it. So these are the pork loins. I've got 3. They're about 1 pound each. It's a really inexpensive cut of meat. I think it's fantastic. Each one serves 2 people. After it's cooked, I'm just going to slice it like that. So to marinate it, I'm going to put it right in this plastic bag. That's one. This way, all you have to do is pour the marinade in over, and then the marinade gets all around the meat and it really gets into it. Okay, just pour it in carefully. Oh, got it. Seal the bag. Well, it's not elegant, but it really works. So I'm going to marinate for about 3 hours. It's even better overnight. So for the pork loins, a few tablespoons of olive oil in a pan. I'm going to do this actually the way restaurants cook meat, which is to sear it in a pan and then bake it in the oven. So just lift it right out of the marinade, put it right into the pan. You don't want to put the marinade into the pan. You want them as dry as you can so that they really sear. I'm just going to sear it for about 2 minutes on each side so it just browns. Then I'm going to put it in the oven and cook it until it's just barely pink inside. Okay, these look gorgeous and brown right now, so I'm just going to give them a turn. Oh, beautiful. Okay, 2 minutes on that side, and then into the oven in a hot oven, and they'll be perfect. It's been resting for 10 minutes, and it should be nice and juicy and tender. How gorgeous does that look? Wow. So I'm just going to put them on the board. I'll show you how I cut them. So I'm just going to do slices like that. Very simple. It doesn't have to be fancy. That's perfectly done. Just nice and pink inside. It's pasta with white truffle butter. I sliced all of these cremini mushrooms. I'm just going to saute them in a little bit of butter, a little bit of oil, until they're really sort of golden brown. This is a great dish for the holidays because you make huge amounts of it. I'm just going to let them cook slowly so they get really nice and tender and browned. Okay, that's the mushrooms. So that's going to cook away. Next thing I want to do is make the sauce. The sauce is really easy. It's heavy cream, about a cup of heavy cream. I'm just going to heat it up. And I think I'm going to do some salt and pepper in it too. I use kosher salt and fresh cracked pepper and 2 pots of this white truffle butter. I'm going to turn off the heat and just melt the truffle butter in it. Just let it melt in. You're not going to believe how fast this dish is. And it's great for the holidays. You make large batches of it. It's good with chicken, as a side dish. It's great on its own with a salad, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, that's just going to melt right into that. I've got a large pot of boiling water, lots of salt, really important. I'm just going to dump the pasta in. So this is fresh fettuccine. It's going to cook in like 2 minutes. Fantastic. One more pasta. That's a lot of pasta. Okay, the mushrooms are cooking away. It's like a one-man song and dance band over here. I think the pasta's done. Just gonna drain it. Whoa, that's a big pot of pasta. So I'm gonna put the pasta right into the cream sauce, and then it really absorbs the flavors. Okay, fresh chives. I think they're really good on this pasta. Ooh, that smells great. So just toss it in with tongs. I can really smell the truffles and the butter and the cream. I mean, how good does this look? Wow. I'm gonna add the cooked mushrooms, all these cremini mushrooms with a little butter. And then the last thing is fresh Parmesan cheese. I mean, for a whole dinner, that was pretty fast, wasn't it? Lots of Parmesan cheese right on top. I'm just gonna toss it in with the tongs. Sprinkling of chives on the top, a little Parmesan cheese. And I would say dinner is served. Start with the chicken, about 4 to 5 pounds, a whole chicken. And the first thing I'm gonna do is pat it dry. And that helps it brown when it's in the oven. And then salt it inside and out. Lots of salt. You want it to have fantastic flavor. And pepper. I want lots of flavor in it. So I'm going to take lemon. Just going to cut it in big quarters. Just like that. I'm going to put half a lemon inside the chicken. And then when it roasts, all the lemon juices and the chicken, and then I'm gonna put garlic in too. So that's gonna roast in. Don't have to peel the garlic, you don't have to do anything. Just cut it right in half, and all that fabulous garlic's gonna be in the chicken, right inside. Okay, into a roasting pan. And then we're gonna cook it with lots of wonderful flavors, onions, more lemon. First, I'm gonna tie this little guy together. There are lots of ways to truss a chicken, but I hate when it looks like it's in bondage. All you have to do is tie the legs together. Now, trussing's really just about making sure the chicken roasts evenly. If the legs are out like that, they're not gonna roast at the same time the rest of the body of the chicken. Just take the wings, just tuck them under. Just like that. Perfect. Little olive oil so it browns beautifully. Just drizzle it on. Clean hands are the best tools. And salt and pepper on top. I want this to be the best chicken ever. Okay, that's the chicken. Next I'm gonna do lemons and onions. And I'm gonna mix them together and roast them with the chicken. And not only will I serve them with the chicken, but it's gonna become the sauce too. It's gonna be fab. So I'm gonna just do this in the bowl. You can do it in the pan, but I just like to toss it together in the bowl. So I've got the half a lemon that I've left over. I'm gonna do another lemon. It's actually amazing. Never think of eating cooked lemon, including the rind, but when it's roasted with the chicken, it sort of caramelizes a little bit, and it's so delicious. A little bit bitter, but I like that. And it's really good. And of course, the juice makes the sauce, which is fabulous. So I'm gonna cut up big, thick slices of 2 Spanish onions. I actually like Spanish onions. They're a little sweeter than regular onions. There's lots of vegetables. It makes lots of sauce and vegetables to serve along with it. It's big, rough slices. 2 tablespoons of good olive oil. Just drizzle it on top. About a teaspoon of salt. This is why I like to do it in a bowl, so you get it really well mixed. Half a teaspoon of pepper. Clean hands again. Okay, and then we take all of this and just put it right around the chicken. And it's all gonna roast together. All the chicken juices and the lemon juices and the onions, they're all gonna cook together. It's gonna be so delicious. This is my version of the Glamour magazine girls' engagement chicken. Okay, into the oven, 425 degrees, and depending on how big the chicken is, it'll be about an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes, and this is gonna be the most delicious engagement chicken. So I'm gonna make lobster mac and cheese, and it starts with the sauce. The French call it a roux, which sounds really fancy. It's not. Start with butter, 6 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just gonna melt that, and then later I'm gonna add some flour for thickener. Okay, the next thing is heating up a quart of milk. And what this does is thicken the sauce. When I add the cheese and the pasta, it gives a nice thick mac and cheese, classic mac and cheese. And then I'm gonna mix into the butter half a cup of flour. And the thing about making a roux, or white sauce, is you want the flour to cook for a minute or 2, so it doesn't have that sort of raw flour taste. Okay, milk looks like it's hot, just under simmering. Just gonna pour it in. And now I'm gonna stir it until it gets nice and thick. So this is white sauce, that's it. It's just thickened milk, and it's gonna make fantastic mac and cheese. Okay, I'm gonna turn the heat off next to the cheese. That's the good part. So that's about 2 cups of grated cheddar, and I'm gonna do 4 cups of grated Gruyere. Just cut it so it fits in the feed tube, just like that. Okay, into the pan with lots of flavorings. I just think it's gonna go so well with lobster. That's a lot of cheese. It makes 8 servings. 1 tablespoon of salt. I use kosher salt. 1 teaspoon of pepper. Give it a little heat. And half a teaspoon of nutmeg. Sort of a classic French gratin seasoning. Just think brings out the nuttiness of the cheeses. Stir that together. This is gonna be really good mac and cheese.
Okay, next I need some pasta. Once it's drained, it goes right back into the sauce and cheese. Yeah, okay. This looks delicious. All the pasta and the cheese, and wait till I put lobster in. It's gonna get even better. Okay, I'm gonna cut up 1.5 pounds of lobster. So I'm gonna leave some of the big pieces whole, and then the really big ones I'm gonna chop up. Okay, all this is just gonna go right into the pot. This may be one of my favorite dishes of all time. So good. Big stir. Okay, now I'm gonna get the topping ready. First I need some melted butter. 2 tablespoons of melted butter. And 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs. So these are breadcrumbs, it's really fresh bread that I just ground up in the food processor. And what this is gonna do is when it's in the oven, it's gonna get brown and crusty. So I'm just gonna sprinkle this right on top. Into the oven, 375 degrees for 30 minutes, and they're gonna be bubbly and crusty on the top. It's gonna be so good. Lobster mac and cheese. Now, I don't know anybody that wouldn't want that for dinner. I don't think there's any dish I've made more than Parmesan chicken. So for a mystery guest, I have no idea what they like. I'm gonna try something really safe. Everybody loves this. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make the crust for the chicken. I'm gonna do a cup of flour, teaspoon of pepper, and a teaspoon of salt. Just gonna mix that all together. So it's gonna be flour, egg, and breadcrumbs. I need 2 eggs. About a tablespoon of water. Just gonna beat this together. And then the breadcrumbs. I need a cup of breadcrumbs. I use seasoned breadcrumbs. You don't have to make your own. Make sure they're fresh though, that they haven't been sitting in the pantry for a long time. And Parmesan cheese, which is why it's Parmesan chicken. So for the Parmesan, I'm just gonna use actually ground Parmesan, and for this it has to be very finely ground so that it distributes itself really well on the crust. So I'm just gonna chop this up, put it in the food processor, and then just grind it up. How fast is that? I just need a 1/2 cup right into the breadcrumbs. So I'm just gonna mix that together. Now for the chicken. And you pound it so it's tenderized and it's actually very even. So this is time for a rolling pin. So just gonna pound it really thin. Okay, that's done. Time to cook the chicken. Tablespoon of butter, tablespoon of olive oil. And I'm gonna take each chicken breast. First dip it in the flour. Make sure it's completely coated. Shake it off. Dip it in the egg and water. And then dip it in the breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese. Okay, right into the pan. I'm gonna cook it for about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Okay, this is nice and brown on this side. I'm just gonna turn it over. Oh, does that look good? Okay, perfect. Browned on that side. And you can tell if the chicken bounces back, it's perfectly done. Onto the sheet pan. Okay, into the oven, very low oven, 200 degrees, and that'll stay warm until we're ready for dinner. Well, that's a crowd I don't want to leave for too long, so I'm glad I did the Parmesan chicken in advance. So the first thing I'm going to do is make lemon vinaigrette. I need 1/4 cup of fresh lemon juice. That's 1/2 cup of olive oil. teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and just whisk it. Nicely washed lettuce. Glad I washed it in advance. Just pour the vinaigrette on. And that's gonna go in the chicken. So the hot chicken and the cold salad, it's just a great combination. All I have to do is plate up the chicken, cold salad on the top, shaving of Parmesan, and I'm back for the fun. In Paris, I take inspiration everywhere. When I come to the Boulevard Raspail Market, I love to see these rotisserie chickens going around and all those gorgeous juices falling on the potatoes. Doesn't that look fabulous? And when I went home, I thought, wouldn't it be great to have bread cubes underneath? And that's how roast chicken with croutons was born. It's so delicious. Chicken with croutons works for a crowd or a simple lunch, like today when my friend Anna shows up. Now I'm gonna stuff the inside with lemon. Just put them right inside. It's gonna have really good flavor. Salt, pepper, and into the pan. Great, so I'm gonna roast it at 425 degrees for about an hour and 15 minutes until it's just perfectly done. And then I'm gonna saute bread croutons. And when the chicken is roasted, I'm gonna slice it over the croutons so it just absorbs all that gorgeous chicken juice and flavors. So for the croutons, I'm gonna use a sourdough bread like this. You can get them all over the country, but it reminds me so much of those wonderful breads from Paulin Bakery that I love in Paris. This is Paulin. It's probably the most famous bread shop in the world. They're famous for these huge loaves of sourdough bread, and they are so delicious. You can buy them in lots of places in the United States. You can also have them shipped overnight to your door. Wait till you see the bread ovens downstairs. They can put 48 of these incredible loaves in at one time. Nothing like roast chicken to make the house smell good. So I'm just gonna cover this with foil. That gets all the juices back into the meat and makes it really moist. About 15 minutes. Which is just enough time to make the croutons. So, croutons. Just gonna slice the bread in big cubes. I think half a loaf is enough for 2 people. And I don't mind it with the crust on. If you prefer it without the crust, just cut it off. But I love the earthy way it looks. It's a great way to use up leftover bread. Just a little film of oil in the pan. Get it really hot. And then just put all the bread cubes in. You want them in one layer. Just saute them, medium heat. Just keep turning them until they're nice and browned on all sides. And then when I slice the chicken over the bread cubes on the platter, all that gorgeous juice from the chicken and the lemon is going to get into the cubes. It's going to be really good. You can really do this with any kind of bread, like a baguette or sourdough bread or a big white bread. Just make sure it's really good bread. Done. And I think I hear Anna. Anna.
Hi,
It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's such a lovely day. That smells so good. What's cooking?
Well, it's a French-inspired meal, so I'm making roast chicken on a bed of croutons.
Oh,
and
that sounds
caramelized
new.
shallots.
Sounds great.
A little Ina twist on a French meal. And
Sounds
French
great.
string beans, and it's with you in mind.
Ah, thank you.
Come on in. Okay, Anna. I left a little glass of wine and some tartine for you. I'm going to go get the chicken ready, okay?
Sounds great.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll be right back.
All right.
I just love Anna. I think she's inspired me more than anybody else I know. But now I have to get lunch ready. Serious stuff. So I'm just gonna cut this up, put it right on top of the croutons. And then all the juices from the chicken are gonna get into the croutons. You can smell all the lemon, the chicken juices. For the breast, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it all off in one piece and then slice it. And that way everybody gets a little bit of the meat and a little bit of the skin. I'm just gonna put the roasted lemons on the platter too. And the beans I blanch for about 3 minutes. And then I have the roasted vegetables. Just put them right on top. Okay, while that's heating up, I'm gonna get the shallots in the bowl. Look how gorgeous and brown, caramelized these are. Oh, they're gonna be so good with the chicken. Everything's ready for lunch. Anna, lunch is ready.
Nice.
I'm making penne arrabbiata. Arrabbiata sauce is really kind of a classic Italian pasta sauce made with tomatoes. Mine has an unbelievable amount of garlic in it, which I'm gonna cook very slowly in olive oil. It's gonna be really sweet and delicious. So nobody wants to peel 24 cloves of garlic. So what I do is I blanch them in a pot of boiling water just for about 15 seconds. And then you'll see the skins just slip right off, just like that. Okay, so that's a cup. So I've got 2/3 of a cup of olive oil that I've got warmed. I'm gonna put the garlic in and just cook it for about 10 minutes, just until the outside is like just barely brown and the inside's really tender. So I've got two 28-ounce cans of San Marzano tomatoes. I think San Marzano are the best quality canned tomatoes. And I've got whole tomatoes. I'm gonna put them in the food processor and just chop them up. Okay, get them in, good. And then I'm just gonna chop them up, just like that. You don't want a puree, you just want them roughly chopped. Okay, I'm gonna take the garlic and put it right into the tomatoes. And then I'm just gonna chop that up so you get bits of garlic in the sauce. So just going back on the stove. Turn on the heat. And I'm gonna take 2 teaspoons of fennel seeds. You can do it in a mortar and pestle, but I think this is actually better to grind them yourself. What I do is just chop them up. Just give it a rough chop like that. They're gonna get tenderized when the sauce cooks. Okay, right into the sauce, right there. 1 teaspoon of hot red pepper flakes. Okay, next is 1/3 of a cup of red wine. Yum. Tablespoon of salt. Make sure it's really well seasoned. Teaspoon of pepper. So I'm just gonna bring it to a boil and then lower the heat and let it simmer for 30 minutes. I'm almost done with the arrabbiata sauce. I'm just gonna add some fresh basil to it. Gives it a nice, fresh, kind of peppery flavor. Okay, about 1/4 cup right into the sauce. So I've got a big pot of boiling water, salt, and 1 pound of penne, and I'm cooking it to about 2 minutes less than it requires for al dente. And that's because I'm gonna cook it in the sauce. Okay, pasta should be done, or at least 2 minutes less than done, and I'm just gonna, with a wire strainer, just put it right into the pasta sauce. And that way, all of the pasta sauce gets absorbed into the pasta, and it really flavors it. And I'm gonna save the pasta water if I need a little extra water. So that's all the pasta. Just give it a big stir. And I'm gonna cook this for about 2 minutes. And you know what? It does need a little water. So I have a ladle. You think you're gonna water it down, and in fact, it does just the opposite. I'm just gonna cook this all together. Oh, man overboard. It's gonna cook together for 2 minutes. The pasta will be perfectly cooked, and the sauce will be just really silken and delicious. And the pasta should be done. Oh, this looks gorgeous. And you can really tell that the tomato sauce has gotten into the pasta. Little fresh basil on top, some Parmesan cheese, because of course you can never have too much Parmesan. And it tastes so good. I'm gonna make Coq Au Vin, which is a French chicken and wine with mushrooms and bacon. So the first thing I need is 4 ounces of bacon or pancetta. I think just good smoked bacon is fine. I put a little splash of olive oil in the pan. I'm just gonna cook it for about 8 to 10 minutes until the bacon's really crisp. Okay, while that cooks, I'm gonna get the chicken ready. So what I've done is I've asked the butcher to cut a chicken up in 10 pieces. I'm gonna salt and pepper it really well on both sides. Okay, so that's salt and peppered, and I think the bacon's done. Perfect. So I'm gonna take the bacon out with a slotted spoon and just leave the fat that's left behind for browning the chicken. Just put it on a big plate. So the chicken's gonna go in. I wanna do it in batches so it browns really nicely. If you put too much in, it actually ends up steaming rather than browning. I'm not cooking it completely, I'm just browning it. And all the flavors from the browning are gonna get into the sauce. So I need half a pound of carrots. I actually use really big, thick slices. 1 yellow onion, just sliced into the pan. 1 clove of garlic minced right in. Okay, next thing is good stuff. 1/4 cup of cognac. This is gonna give the flavor of the cognac, and it deglazes the pan. Get all those delicious crusty parts into the sauce. Okay, now I'm gonna put the chicken and the bacon all back into the pot. And all the juices that collect on the plate too. Have a bottle of Burgundy. You can use Pinot Noir, but just something really good that you would drink. Cup of chicken stock. And the last thing is a big sprig of fresh thyme. Don't even pick the leaves off. You can just take the stem out after it's done. Okay, into the oven, 250 degrees for just about an hour, and it's gonna be so good. So I have a half a pound of mushrooms. These are cremini, you can use porcini. The only thing you don't want to use are those sort of button mushrooms that you find in the grocery store. They don't have a lot of flavor. So I'm just going to cook these in a little bit of butter. Just get them browned. I use a big saute pan so they brown nicely. You don't want them to steam, you want them to really sort of sear a little bit. Fantastic. Now I'm going to get the Coq Au Vin out of the oven. This smells so good. Okay, so now I'm gonna make a little bit of a roux, which is flour and butter to thicken it. So I need 1.5 tablespoons of flour and 1 tablespoon of softened butter. Just mash it all together and then add it back into the pot, and it thickens really nicely. This is gonna thicken the sauce beautifully. And the last really important ingredient for Coq Au Vin, little baby onions. So right into the pot. I'm gonna add the mushrooms in. I actually leave the mushrooms till the last ingredient so they don't disintegrate, and they're really great when they're just quickly sauteed. Give it a stir. Cook for about 10 minutes so the sauce is nice and thick. And take out the stems of the thyme. It's all gonna cook together. It's gonna be so good.
This is really good. This is just delicious.
So I have a 5-pound piece of really good quality chuck roast. If I did this with something like a filet of beef, by the time it was done braising, it would be tough and dry. I want it to be moist and absolutely delicious. I'm gonna pat it dry, helps in the searing, and then I'm gonna season it. Tablespoon of salt. It sounds like a lot, but it's a big piece of meat. And just all over. Whenever I serve it, people go, oh, I love pot roast. And a 1/2 tablespoon of pepper. Big handful of flour on a plate. And then just roll the pot roast in it. So this is gonna help searing the outside of the pot roast, but what it's also gonna do is it's gonna thicken the sauce. And this is where the big pot comes in. This is a Dutch oven, and it's just the best pot you can use for pot roast. So I'm just gonna heat up about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Just enough to sear the meat all the way around. Just get it really nice and hot. What the searing's gonna do is gonna seal in the juices, but it's also gonna make the sauce taste fantastic. Okay, in goes the beef. It's going to sear about 4 to 5 minutes on each side. In the meantime, I'm going to get the vegetables ready. I need 2 cups of carrots. And I think this pot roast is ready to be turned. I'm just going to turn it maybe a quarter of a turn so it gets browned all over. Oh, look how gorgeous that looks. Next, I'm going to work on the celery. I need 2 cups of celery. Nice big chunks. You can do it more finely if you like, but I like the sort of earthy, chunky flavor of the big chunks of carrots and celery. Next is the onions. I've got 2 big Spanish onions. You can use regular yellow onions, but these are so much easier. Just give them a big rough dice. Next are the leeks. Okay, I'm just gonna give them a big rough chop. And these leeks are gonna go in with the onions and carrots and celery. It's gonna flavor the sauce. Okay, I think the meat's all seared. I'm gonna take this big baby out, put it on a plate, and then start making the sauce. Whoa. And put a little bit more olive oil in, and then I'm gonna sear all the vegetables, get them nice and browned and caramelized. It's kind of like making soup. You always wanna start with the vegetables and get them nice and brown. I'm gonna cook them for about 10 minutes. Okay, while that cooks, I'm gonna put some garlic in. And the garlic goes right in with the vegetables. With a tablespoon of salt. Just smells wonderful. Easy enough for every day and delicious for company. Bouquet garni can be really any kind of herbs, but I'm using thyme and rosemary from my garden. Sometimes what the French do is they like hang the string over the side of the pot, but we'll be able to fish it out. Right in. It's gonna flavor, it's gonna be fantastic. Next, some red wine. I like to use Burgundy for this. About 2 cups right in the pan. And what this is gonna do is gonna flavor the sauce. 2 tablespoons of cognac. Gives it that nice hit. And this is smelling pretty good. Okay, next is 1 can of whole plum tomatoes. I actually choose the tomatoes that are in tomato puree, so it's even thicker. 1 cup of chicken stock. I use homemade chicken stock, if you can. It really does make a difference. Tomatoes and the wine, celery and carrots. Fantastic. It's gonna make such a good sauce. Now it's just time to put the beef in. Oh, this is some large pot roast. Just slide it right in. And that's what's gonna make it taste moist and delicious. All the gorgeous sauce. I'm just gonna bring it up to a simmer, and then it's gonna go into the oven and it's gonna cook for several hours until it's meltingly delicious. Who wouldn't want that for dinner? I would say this is pot roast good enough for company. For the beef bourguignon, what I have here is about 1/2 pound of bacon. I cooked it in a tablespoon of oil. I'm gonna take it out, which leaves some of the fat in the pan, and then I'm gonna cook the beef and the vegetables and the wine, a little cognac. It's gonna be really good together. So the next thing I'm gonna do is take 2.5 pounds of chuck, which is a fairly inexpensive cut of meat, not like filet of beef. And I've cut it in cubes, and I'm just gonna dry it a little bit. If the cubes are dry, they'll brown better in the pan. Just salt, pepper, and then I'm gonna brown them in the pan. Just do it in a single layer so they brown really evenly. I'm gonna take this and take it out of the pan onto the plate with the bacon and just put it all together. You wanna save all the juices, and it's all gonna go back in the pan later. Okay, and then the next thing I'm gonna do is put in the rest of the meat. This is a really traditional French recipe, and I just think it's a much easier way to make it. It takes much less time. Okay, that's done. I'm just gonna take this out. It smells so good already. Now I'm just gonna finish prepping the vegetables. I have 1 pound of carrots, and now what I'm gonna do is throw them into the pot with all the juices from the beef and the bacon. and cook them for about 10 or 15 minutes until they're just tender. And I'm going to add 2 large yellow onions and a tablespoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of freshly ground pepper. It seems like a lot, but it's a big stew. I'm just going to saute this for about 15 minutes until the vegetables are just tender and the onions are nicely browned. So the next thing I'm going to do for the beef bourguignon is put in chopped garlic, about 2 cloves. Very often recipes call for onions and garlic to go in together, but I think the garlic really burns very quickly. So I tend to do the onions for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then the garlic for only the last minute. And then you get all the flavor of the garlic and no burning. So 2 cloves of garlic, right in with the carrots and the onions. So I need a half a cup of cognac. I'm going to pour it into the pot. And now comes the fun part. I'm going to flame it. Stand back. Whew. What the flame does is it burns off all the alcohol but leaves that gorgeous flavor of cognac. Okay, and then I'm going to put all the meat and the bacon and all those gorgeous juices right back in. And then a whole bottle of red wine, good red wine. You want to make sure it's wine that you drink. And actually, you can even serve the same wine with dinner. I did say a whole bottle. And then I'm going to add a little bit of beef broth. Just want enough so that it covers, almost covers the meat, but not quite. And don't spend days making beef broth. A can of it is just fine. Tablespoon of tomato paste. I actually get it in a tube, so it's really easy to keep stored in the refrigerator. Okay. Keep it nice and fresh with the top on. And the last thing here is fresh herbs, fresh thyme. Smelling awfully good. I think Miguel's going to be pleased. So now it's simmering, which is perfect. Now this is the other novel thing about this recipe. Instead of cooking it on top of the stove, as most beef bourguignon is, and I'm endlessly fiddling, turning up the heat, turning down the heat, I discovered that if I cooked it at 250 degrees in the oven for an hour and 15 minutes, instead of like 2.5 hours as they usually are, it comes out perfectly done. So into the oven, an hour and 15 minutes at 250 degrees, and we're gonna have beef bourguignon. I'm making linguine with shrimp scampi. It's a great summer dish. I add oil to the pasta pot so that the pasta doesn't stick together, and salt for flavor. Okay, that's gonna cook for 7 to 10 minutes according to the directions on the package. Okay, that's 3 tablespoons of olive oil and about 3 tablespoons of butter. I do the olive oil because it has a high burning temperature and the butter because it has lots of flavor. I know this looks like a lot, but it's the sauce for the entire dish. And about 1.5 tablespoons of garlic. With garlic, you really don't want to cook it too long, so just about a minute. Nothing worse than the flavor of burnt garlic. So 1 minute while I get everything else ready. So the first thing is shrimp. And what I buy is peeled and deveined shrimp from the fish store. If you can't buy it, you can always peel and devein it yourself. I'm going to add a pound of shrimp and just cook it for a very short time, like 3 to 5 minutes. And all that flavor of the garlic is going to get into the shrimp. So first thing I'm going to do is salt and pepper the shrimp. I want it to have lots of flavor because when you add the pasta, the sauce has to flavor the pasta also. So it's going to be really strongly flavored. Just turn the shrimp so they cook evenly on both sides. It smells so good, all that garlic and butter and oil. How bad can that be? Michael's so great with flowers. I can't wait to see what he's doing at the table.
That looks good. I hope Anna likes it.
So, just drain the water from it, and then it's going to go right into that pan with the shrimp and the garlic and butter and oil. It's going to absorb all that great flavor. Okay, just like that. 2 spoons. Just toss it all together. This is actually a great way to make any pasta. Italians do it. Even when you're making pasta with tomato sauce, as you cook the pasta and the sauce together for the last few minutes, and it really absorbs the flavor. Okay, and then the last ingredients are lemon zest, lemon juice, I like a little bit of heat, so just a sprinkling of red pepper flakes. Okay, just toss that together, and then I have 2 more things to put in. Parsley. Okay, right on top. And then, because I want you to know, you can't really see the lemon, but I want you to know it's lemon, what I do is a few thin slices of lemon. People aren't going to eat them, but they'll see that it's lemon. So I'm going to add a few slices of lemon to the whole thing before I finish tossing. This is really a great summer lunch.